Hi everyone, it's Lindy on here from Pink Whisper Designs. Today I've got a really fun and easy watercolor technique to show you. We're going to be using a 3D embossing folder, and then for our sentiments we're going to be doing a little bit of hot foiling. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to be using this beautiful 3D textured impressions embossing folder from Sizzix, and this one is called Wildflowers, and it is just absolutely gorgeous. I'm going to start off with two pieces of white cardstock. This is the Strathmore Bristol Smooth cardstock, and I've cut these down to about 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. For inks, we're using the Kitsch Flamingo and Picked Raspberry dye inks. These are not the distress inks, these are the regular dye inks. I've got the mini ink pads, but you can certainly use the large ones. What I'm going to do is open that embossing folder, and on the top portion I'm going to apply that dye ink all over. We're going to do a little different technique for the second one, but for this one we're going to apply that ink to the top of the embossing folder, and I'm patting it on and making sure I have a nice coating of that ink. Now let's run it through the die cutting machine. I like to use a couple of pieces of thin cardboard. These are just from the backs of some old notepads I had. And I like to place the embossing folder on a little bit of an angle, and then you can run that through. You could certainly just stack up some cardstock here. You just want to make sure it's not too tight as you're running it through. There is also a universal system for the Spellbinders Platinum 6 die cutting machine now, so you can use that. And just be careful to use the directions for your specific machine. So now you can see we run that through, and we can easily wipe off that embossing folder. And now what I'm going to do is take a little bit of water, and here I've got my Dina Wakley number 6 round brush. But you could use any brush here. I just like the big brush. It kind of pushes that water around a little bit better for me. So I'm just loading that brush up with some water, and then I'm coming over to the embossed area, and I'm just moving that ink around a little bit. Just spreading it around, kind of getting it down into those crevices. When it runs through the embossing folder without any water sprayed on it, you get kind of a splotchy look. So for the second embossing folder, I'm going to show you a little bit easier way to do this, but this would certainly work. So here again, I'm just kind of applying that water and spreading out that ink. Now let's go to the Picked Raspberry, and I'm putting some on my glass medium mat, and then I'm getting plenty of water on my brush, and I'm going to dab that into some of the crevices, a little bit in the centers of each of those flowers. I just want to give kind of some light and dark areas to these flowers. Now, you don't have to be fussy here. It doesn't have to be perfect. I'm just looking to get some dimension to these flowers and bring out certain areas on them. And if you get too much, you can always just pull or dab a little bit off with your paper towel. But here again, I want plenty of water on that brush as I bring that Picked Raspberry ink over to the embossing folder. So here again, I'm just dropping some down into those crevices. And I want to make sure that I have it all the way up to the edges so that your eye kind of goes to the edges with this darker color. So there you can see I'm applying a little bit along the edge. Again, just have fun with this. Do not stress over this. This is just fun and relaxing, and it really doesn't matter. It's not perfect. It's just to give some light and dark areas. I find this process to be so relaxing. It's just fun. It really makes me feel artistic, and it's just a beautiful result. So what I'm going to do now is set that one aside to dry. We'll come back to it here in a second, but let's go ahead and grab the second one. So now I've got Abandoned Coral and Scattered Straw. Again, these are the dye inks, and I'm going to start with that Scattered Straw this time. So I'm starting with the lighter color in both of these cases. So now here on this one, we're going to do this a little bit differently. We're going to spritz that ink at the top of the embossing folder, and I'm using my Tim Holtz Distress Sprayer to do that. And then we'll go ahead and run that through just like we did before. And I like to run it through a couple of times just to make sure that ink transfers from the embossing folder onto my cardstock. Again, we can easily wipe away any excess. And now you can see that that ink has spread out a little bit on its own. So I'm not going to have to work quite as hard to move that around. I'm just going to take some water again on that brush, and I'm going to push that ink around a little bit more, but you can see I don't have to do too much to it. By spritzing that embossing folder before we put the paper in there, I'm getting that really nice watercolor look. So now that I've spread that ink around and I like the way that looks, I'm going to go to the abandoned coral. I'm placing some on my glass media mat, and I want to make sure that brush is nice and wet again. And I'm going to go back and do the same thing, just dropping some of that abandoned coral down into these areas. And I do like to place a little bit more on the centers of each of these flowers. It really makes them pop out. And you can see how easy this is. It's just a really simple, fun technique. I would suggest look through your embossing folders and see which other ones you might have that would work really, really well for this. The florals I find work beautifully with this technique, but I think any of your embossing folders would really look very interesting with this watercolor technique. So just kind of have fun with that. What I love about this technique as well is if you want to make a lot of cards in a very short period of time, this is the way to go. You could make a whole set of note cards in all different color combinations, just changing out your sentiments, and give that to somebody as a gift. These would be great for a wedding if you wanted to do a wedding card, or even giving the bride a stack of these cards for her thank you notes. You could do it in her wedding colors, which would be absolutely gorgeous. So this is a really fun way to apply some ink to your embossing folders and keeping it really simple. And I just thought this combination was absolutely stunning. I just love how this looks. Now I did come back in with a little bit more color and just kind of really accentuate the centers of each of those flowers. And you can come back in as many times as you want. You may want to let it dry in between, and then you can come back and drop in some more color. And you can see how that really brings out the design in these flowers. Here I'm just trying to make sure I have that color all the way up to the edges, and look at that, that is just gorgeous. So let's also set that aside to dry. So now that this panel is dry, I'm going back to the picked raspberry, just placing a little bit on my glass mat. I'll go ahead and pick that up. I spritzed it with a little bit of water from my distress sprayer, and then I can pick that up with that round brush. I want large splatters. If you want your splatters to be smaller, you would want to use a smaller brush. So again, this is the 6 round brush that I'm using, and I'm getting these nice big watercolor spatters. And you can see how beautiful that is. So now let's go ahead and do the same thing with this one, and I'm using that abandoned coral. A little bit of water. I'm spritzing that with a little bit of water, and then I've cleaned off my brush, and we're going to go ahead and spatter this color down. So now we've got these 2 panels. Let's go ahead and select some hot foil. This is from Spellbinders, and this is a variety pack. I'm going to grab the gold and the silver. We're going to hot foil some sentiments. So let's grab the gold one for the panel on the right and the silver one for the one on the left. So let's grab some sentiments. These are from Creative Expressions. These are the Wordies sentiment sheets, And this one is called Smile, and you can see all these fantastic little sentiments that you get. And there's 2 sheets of the white and 2 sheets of the black. So just keep in mind, wherever the black is what is going to get foiled. So I've got my Glimmer hot foil system from Spellbinders. I'm just turning it on. And then once that green light stops flashing, once it turns solid, it'll be heated up and we'll be ready to go. So let's go ahead and cut out a couple of sentiments. I'm selecting this one that says, I miss your smile. So you want to place your foil pretty side up on top of your sentiment. Now you'll notice here I've placed the sentiment inside some note paper. I just folded 3 little pieces of note paper in half, and I'm placing the sentiment in there with the foil face up on top of that. That's just going to create a little shim. My machine does require that. You can play around with your own machine and see how much or how little paper you would need. I've got my 2 plates and I'm going to place those right on top. It's nice and hot now. That green light was solid. So we can go ahead and run this through the Spellbinders Platinum 6 die cutting machine. And I'm running it through a little bit slower just to make sure that foil has time to transfer. And now I can go ahead and check this out. So again, you want to create the shim that works best for you. So there we have that first one in gold that says, I miss your smile. And then let's do You Make Me Smile. I've got the sentiment with the foil pretty side up. I've sandwiched it between that note paper and I'm running that through the die cutting machine. And so here's that second sentiment. Now this one you'll notice I got a little bit of extra foiling there on the right hand side. So I'm using my Tombow Mono Sand Eraser and I'm just going to get rid of that. And this is really quick and easy to do. And it won't leave any marks or anything. You just want to just kind of sand that off. And now that we have the 2 sentiments, I'm going to mount these onto some black 100-pound cardstock. I'm using my Nuvo Deluxe adhesive, and I'm going to leave just a little black border all the way around the edges, maybe about 1/8 of an inch. Now I'll just go to my Tim Holtz paper trimmer and trim those down. Now do keep in mind that all of the products I'm using today are listed down below and also on my blog. And here I'm just going to leave that 1/8 inch all the way around. We're going to be adding some black paper behind our floral embossed area, so it's going to coordinate nicely with that. So let's go ahead and cut these down. I'll trim these to about 4 inches by 5 1/4 inch. We'll go back to that 100-pound black cardstock and we'll cut that at 4 1/4 inches by 5 1/2 inches. So the size of a standard A2 size card. To attach these together, I'm using the Lawn Fawn 1/4 inch double-sided tape, and that'll hold this down nice and secure. So I'm going to center that panel on that black cardstock, and I'll do the same thing for this other one. Now let's go ahead and create the card base. This measures 4 1/4 by 11 inches, and I'll score it at 5 1/2. So that'll be a standard A2 size top folding card. And I'm just using the Strathmore Bristol Smooth cardstock to create that card base. So I'm pressing that out with my bone folder. Now let's go ahead and attach those panels to the front of the card. Here I am going to use the Nuvo Deluxe adhesive. I did use the double stick tape on the embossing folder panel because there's a lot of nooks and crannies and I just wanted to make sure that it held on there nice and secure. But here I'll just use the glue so I have a little time to move that around if I need to. And then I'll glue that other panel as well. Let's go ahead and add the sentiment. And I'm going to pop this up. I'm using a little bit of the 3D foam tape. This is a really super sticky, strong tape. So I'll just place a piece of that on the back of each of these sentiment strips. And then we can go ahead and place this down towards the lower right-hand portion of the card. And I'll do the same thing here. Now let's go ahead and add a few little embellishments. I've got the Pinkfresh Studio metallic pearls, and the first one we're going to be looking at is the silver, and this is a beautiful shiny silver. I'll just put it in my little tray so you can see how beautiful these are. And you do get 3 different sizes in the package, so we're going to use a large, medium, and a small. I'll just place 3 of those just above the sentiment. You could certainly add more here if you wanted to. I thought just a little bit of sparkle would be nice. And then for this other card, I'm going to use the metallic pearls in the sparkling champagne, and these are really pretty. So again, I'll do that same layout. You could certainly mix this up a little bit, but if you were making a stack of note cards, this would be really fun and easy to do, and you could just use all different colors of your little metallic pearls and different colors of your inks. So there's a close-up look at these cards. You can see that pretty foiling that we have. So I really hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please hit the like button and subscribe. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so that you don't miss a single video. As always, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you all have a great day. Take care. Bye-bye.